maybe I'm going to suggest, I haven't read the book yet. I'm like, again, it is very intimidating to do something for the first time. You and I both know
Oh,
that,
dude, I tell
especially
you,
something where you could get criticized, right?
yeah, that's the toughest thing in life, and I'm dealing with this kind of in my regular life. I have people in my in, and this has happened to me multiple times. I worked for this tire company for 11 years, right? And I went in there knowing that, in year one, I was part time. I was going to college. I wasn't doing very well in college. I dropped out and started working at this place full time. And then I knew exactly when I started working there that I was going to make a career of it. This is going to be what it is. I'm going to become an assistant manager. Then I'm going to become a manager. Then I'm going to become a zone manager. I knew the path to get to where it was. And I worked at a couple different stores, and I listened to all these other people. And the store that I actually got promoted out of was kind of a funny one because when I was in high school, my best friend's dad was the manager of that store. He actually worked there. This is how I knew about the company. I got a job there, and his dad was really good about promoting someone once a year. Like he wanted to get his guys trained up and promoted. So he'd get these guys promoted once a year, and everyone would go out. Well, his dad retires, and then when his dad retires, another manager comes in there, and I show up working there, and I'm still on this path to try and get promoted. And they go, "Well, you're at the wrong store." Like every single employee inside that store, it was one of the biggest stores I worked at. There was probably 20 employees, just changing tires. Sales and service is what they called it. And they said, "You're at the wrong store if you're going to get promoted." And I'm like, why? Why am I at the wrong store? So I started to kind of do a little bit of research. We had a new assistant manager that had came in because the other one got promoted. So he did promote a manager, but that guy was there before, and that was their deal. Well, Dave would have promoted him, not Jim. And so the assistant manager goes, "So you want to get promoted, right? Well, what are you doing?" I'm like, "Well, I don't know. What do I do? What have I done to get promoted?" First of all, you got to be top wage, which I wasn't yet so I fought for a review to get top wage so that I could get ready to get promoted to be assistant manager. Everyone's like, "That's never going to happen. It's never going to happen." And lo and behold, that manager had nothing against promoting people. He just wasn't going to hold your hand. So you had to do the work in order to get promoted, but everyone sat there and told me that wasn't going to happen. And 6 months later, I was promoted to an assistant manager. But I had to go in there and do the work. And I remember writing a budget. My assistant manager goes, "Hey, you got to write a budget because that's part of getting promoted is doing a budget for your store." And so he goes, "Just go grab a P&L for this month and just do a 10% increase across the board. And then when you're done, let me take a look at it. And then you can go show it to Jim and say, 'Hey, look, I want to get promoted. Here's a budget.'" I wrote the thing out. And then I took it into my assistant looked at it, I took it into my manager, and the manager looks at it and he goes, "Hey, this is only part of it. You did a great job. Here's a budget, but this is what I want you to do. Are you going to have a 10% increase across the board for every single category that we have? No, you're not. So now go back over to that filing cabinet and start looking through there and figure out what's a realistic percentage for an increase for every single category and write it out." And that's when I realized that it was all about me doing the work, not him holding my hand and telling me how to do it. He wasn't going to do that. He wants to promote people, but he wants people to do the work to get promoted. And when you figure those things out, you start to realize that it is about you doing the work. No one's going to do it for you. And you can expect it to happen all the time, but it never does. I mean, I've been podcasting for 5 years. It doesn't just happen. I met with someone the other day who has been doing it for the same time. Is there any other podcasters in Idaho that are doing this right now? And no, it's me and him. So, I mean, there's a lot of people who just want things to happen. And podcasting is a big thing with that because how many shows do you know that, "Oh, hey, my friend's like, I'm starting a podcast." They do 3 episodes. They don't get any listens or views. And they're like, "I'm done." I mean, it's all about you putting in the effort.
Yeah, and so surprising is going back to the professor, he really did give us the Yellow Brick Road. Now, he didn't tell us which book to pick. He didn't tell us to be good writers. You had to do the work. But
Yeah.
here's the point. He made it as easy as possible. And let me tell you something. When I submitted it, I'm a good writer. I submitted it.
Right.
They came back to me with very few changes
Mm-hmm.
and said, "Hey, we want to do this." And I said, "Oh, super." And they said, "Approve the proof." I approved the proof. They said, So I'm expecting, well, you're going to get published in the new year. They came back and said, no, you're getting published November 30th.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, it just so happened, I guess something else dropped out. And there's your opportunity. All of a sudden you look down, you go, wow. What happens is what is opportunity? What is success? Success is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yep.
We've actually done the work and we're there and we're standing there and we're ready. And that's the other thing. I've talked to people about podcasting and they said, what do you know so far? And I said, I've gotten comfortable on camera.
Yeah.
I said, I'm learning. I said, I'm doing lots of the work and I'm learning how to get there from point A to point B. But have I learned how to be successful? No, but I've listened to everybody's story on podcasting and it sounds the same. You know
Yep.
why? No success. I mean, very little success. Then all of a sudden, one day, one angle that they take, boom.
Yeah. And that's the thing, like the thing that I've noticed this whole time, and even sitting down with my friend, we were talking about it, and it was like, how do we get from here to here, right? And the number one thing that people talk about in podcasting is how do we make money, right? That's the first thing that they start out, how do I get monetized? How do I get monetized? And it's like, it's not that easy. It really isn't.
No.
But how much effort have you put into doing that? Because you have to reach out to these, hey, mostly it's advertising, right? But what I have learned over the last 5 years is there has to be something else that it's a key to, right? Like you may make money. Like I can ask every single one of you, hey, join the Patreon, because guess what? That's going to help me keep this going. And I do have some awesome Patrons who support, but it's a few. It's like 3 or 4. You need hundreds. You need thousands to be able to make your money. You need people to be gifting here. You need people to be subscribing to YouTube, commenting there, subscribing to every single thing that you have, and making donations and doing all that stuff to make it off a podcast. So what do you have to do? You have to do something else. Not everyone is Joe Rogan. That guy is making tons of money with all these sponsors that he has doing what he's doing. People viewing, people listening, bringing it to a platform. You may get there, but it's a long, hard road if you're not famous, if you don't have this super niche-y thing. So find a way to make people. You've seen it with mine, right? It's changed how many times? How many times has it changed since you've known me? I mean, that's the thing.
Yeah. Well, and also too, we live in a world of disproportionate rewards.
Mm-hmm.
What disproportionate rewards means is that 90% of the people don't get paid much of anything.
Yep.
10% do okay. Inside that 10% is 1%, and they make all the money. It's like being an actor.
Yep.
Think about it. All the people who have an acting card, all the people that, what happens? It's the 1% that make all this money that people aspire to be. Now, 10% of actors are called working actors, meaning they make a reasonable living at acting. The other 90% don't.
Yeah. How did that, here's the thing. I love that you brought that up, but I think that a lot of people don't understand. This is episode like 103 of this year, but it's like almost episode 400 of this podcast. How many times do you think that actor just showed up and said, here I am, put me in the movie, right?
Oh,
How many
Lord,
failed attempts did they have before they had to actually get that part? That's the thing that I don't think a lot of people understand is they just want it to happen, but they don't want to do the work. We all want instant gratification. And this is, like I said, 394, 395. The fact of the matter is that if I stop now, I may never get that moment. I may never get that moment where it just blows up, right? But if I keep going, I have the opportunity. So I'm making the odds better in my favor by continuing.
I pulled a quote from Donald Trump. It was a video, and he basically was saying, don't quit. Never quit. He said, what I see people doing is quitting.
Yep.
Here's the thing. You have to be flexible. You have to adjust. Sometimes you have to go over the wall or around the wall or under the wall. He said, the reality is you don't know exactly how you're going to get there. But he said, the reality is you can't quit.
Yep.
I see so many people quitting, and that's why they fail.
Yep.
You cannot, as long as you don't quit, you haven't failed. It might be iteration number 100. I mean, my gosh, we talk about how many light bulb iterations were there?
Yep.
Like 1,000 before they
Hmm.
got figured out what worked. We have to get really, really comfortable with failure. And somebody just says that's a grind. Well, yes,
Yeah,
it is. It's an awful grind,
it is.
but it's life. It's
Yeah.
life. You got to grind it out.
That's the fact of the matter is that like you have to be willing to do the work. I mean, failure is like just the first attempt in learning or whatever. Like it's one of those things where you have to just figure it out. You have to keep trying because you will not if you don't get it right the first time, which many people don't get it right the first time. Every person who is successful, you look like even like look at Donald Trump. People may sit there and go, "Hey, he's done this and he's done that and blah 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 blah." Well, he has filed bankruptcy. You know why he filed bankruptcy? So that he could keep going because he had to find a way to get around so that he could keep going. Well, that's a shady way of doing it. Well, it's not. It's a way to restructure, to restart, to re-go, to do whatever you need to do. How many people in your life have had to file bankruptcy because you had a hardship in your life? So all of a
Right.
sudden you're a bad person because you did that? No.
Right.
You're a person who needed to find a way to get a restart in life, and that's what you did. Now, am I saying go file bankruptcy? No, I'm not. But if you're at a point where you have done every single thing that you can do and you can't figure out what to do, that is just a tool that you can use to get yourself restarted. I mean, it's looked upon negatively, but it's also something that can actually help you, right?
Yes, I have a friend who's an author, and his first book sold like 65,000 copies, and he
Yeah.
writes novels. And his second book sold well over 100,000. His third book sold 150,000. So in other words, he had that once in a life opportunity where it just hit, right?
Hmm.
But he realized, he said, it's weird. I don't get paid anything to sell 100,000 books. It's shockingly small.
Yeah.
And so he said, I'm going to change the way I do it. So it took him 10 years of being successful and then eventually getting the rights back to his books to where he feels successful, where he's pushing his own books out and stuff. It took him 10 years, lots of trial and error, lots of failure, lots of success,
Yeah.
right? But lots of failure in that success. And he
Right.
said, I didn't even like the titles of my book because they were established by the publisher. I knew what I wanted them to be. So when I got the rights back, I changed the titles.
Yep.
And this is all the same thing of trying to get control, but realizing this guy was wildly successful. And even he had massive failure. And all he
Right.
was trying to do was continue to work the problem.
Hmm. Yeah.
And that's what we want to celebrate.
Yep, exactly. It's just like you said, work the problem. What's the problem? Figure out what the problem is and start thinking about how you can change what you are doing to make it happen. I mean, we can go back to sports if we wanted to too. You think about it like you've talked about multiple times where, someone's running a route and, you dump it off and all of a sudden you find out that this guy's there. We study the tape, we realize what's going on, where that guy's not going to be, what is his tendency, how is he going to change that, and then work against it. It's problem solving. Life is problem solving.
Yeah. And so much of when I look at, especially because I was a quarterback, I look at where somebody makes a throw and I'm going, okay, you fit it in there. It made a spectacular 65-yard touchdown, but that was actually the wrong throw.
Yep.
Okay, you got lucky.
Hmm.
The right throw was over here. This is where you had the advantage. This is where you had the risk reward that made sense, right?
Yep.
In other words, if you're going to make a throw, do you want to throw against one defender or do you want to throw against two? Well,
Right.
obviously, I want to throw against one. Well, don't you notice how all of a sudden you'll see somebody throw like a deep in, and all of a sudden there's three defenders back there, and
Hmm.
you're asking the question, when the hell did you throw it over there?
Yep.
Well, guess what happens? If there's three defenders on one guy, what's the math tell you? Somebody is standing there waving their hands
Yep.
because there's no one around them. And so that's back to sometimes you get rewarded for being stupid.
Yep.
Okay.
The thing is like now first you had a 50-50 chance. Now you got a 1 in 4 chance. Hopefully
Right.
those guys don't get there fast enough to make something happen, but
Yeah.
they're on their way.
That's not a 50-50 ball when you throw it into, 4 people. It's not a
Exactly.
50-50
That's it.
ball.
Yeah. Like it becomes
Yeah.
it becomes a 25%.
Yeah.
And now there's a lot of other things that come into play. So,
And all kinds of bad. I used to joke because they would throw this route, especially over the middle. And I used to laugh and say bad things happen when you throw over the middle.
yep.
And somebody said, "Why?" I said, "Because there's just a lot of people there.
Yep.
There's a lot of hands. There's linemen. There's linebackers. There's your receiver. The thing that aggravates you most at quarterback is when you hit the guy in the hands
Uh-huh.
and the ball comes off his hands. And guess what? Is when you do something over the middle like that, it goes up, right?
Yep.
And when it goes up, who's behind him? The safety.
Yep.
Yeah.
I
just
couldn't.
like,
That was the worst. I hated screenplays. I thought they were the worst ones ever. But I know it was like a misdirection thing. But it was always like, man, I hope that guy catches that ball because it is the quarterback's getting rid of it as quick as possible, and the linemen are just going down the field, and you're just like, oh, hopefully he gets it. It works, so you look good. It doesn't, you're screwed.
Yeah, and you were always at weird arm angles too, because the idea was you let the defensive players in,
Yep.
right?
And you got to get rid of it.
Oh yeah, and you got to get rid of it. It's a weird arm angle, the whole 9 yards. And used to be, now they can't, but used to be, they'd hit you anyhow.
Yep.
They just hit you anyhow, just because.
That's when injuries happen.
Yeah, so you're like, okay, this is gonna hurt.
Yep. Well, everyone, tomorrow is Thanksgiving. I don't know what Robert's got going on, but I got a turkey I'll be barbecuing on the old Rec Tech and hanging out with my family. You got any big plans, Robert?
I have one of my sons in town from College Station, my daughter and the grandkids and my son-in-law. So we'll have a big party.
Very nice.
But it's really going to be just football and food.
That's the problem with me is like I'm not I just can't watch it anymore. Like I watch the Super Bowl usually. I guarantee it'll be on the TV tomorrow because my brothers are big into football, so they'll be watching all the time. I just I see the lessons and I like it, but I just don't. I can't. I think it's because I played. I just have a hard time watching anymore because it's not the same and it's just different and I don't know. But,
it is different. Yeah.
Yeah. But well, everyone, thank you very much for hanging out with us today on this episode of Shaping Success. Have a great Thanksgiving.